My wife wanted an open marriage. Now she regrets everything Reddit-stories-GG. What's up, everybody? Today we've got an incredible story about a wife who pushed for an open relationship and now deeply regrets it. Hey everyone. I never imagined I'd reach this point, the point where I'm turning to strangers on the internet for guidance. But here I am. My wife Rachel and I have been together for a decade, married for 8 of those years. We met during our university days and were each other's first and only partners. I genuinely believed we had something rare and beautiful because of that. Turns out, I was the only one who felt that way. A while back, Rachel landed a position at a new firm. Initially, she struggled to fit in since she's always been on the quieter side. But after I encouraged her, she ended up bonding with a circle of women. Some single, some divorced, some casually dating, but none actually married. At first, I was thrilled she'd found a social group. But then the after-work drinks started, followed by late-night outings and whatever else her crew had lined up. Her shifting behavior started worrying me. I tried bringing it up, but I also didn't want to come across as controlling. It began taking a toll on our bedroom life. Rachel had never been the one to make the first move intimately, but now she was constantly either exhausted or simply not interested. Then her company brought in a new team lead named Derek. Rachel and her friends immediately gravitated toward him. She started dropping his name here and there, but eventually she was going on about how he handled various situations, ones that clearly had nothing to do with the office. I confronted her about this obvious fascination, and she waved it off like it was nothing. She even began asking whether I ever wished I'd been with more women before settling down. I told her no. She was everything I ever wanted. I could swear I caught a flicker of sadness cross her face before she abruptly changed the subject. Then came the open marriage pitch. She framed it as a way to reinvigorate our relationship. I was stunned. This was completely out of character for Rachel, who had never been particularly adventurous in that department. I refused at first and asked point blank if this had anything to do with Derek. She denied it, but admitted she felt like life had passed her by, and she didn't want to lose me. So this seemed like the safer route. I knew she was playing with fire, but foolishly, naively, I gave in. We laid down ground rules, the main one being that neither of us would bring anyone back to our home. So for about a year, Rachel goes on dates, has flings, and then, as if I hadn't seen it coming from a mile away, ends up in a full-blown relationship with Derek. Meanwhile, I went on a handful of dates myself, but couldn't bring myself to sleep with anyone. It just felt fundamentally wrong. Rachel would check in and ask if I was okay, but never actually adjusted her own behavior. Eventually, the love I once held for her, that pure, sacred feeling of marriage, simply evaporated. And it was destroying me from the inside out. That's when I went on a date with an extraordinary woman named May, who had recently moved from Taiwan. Talking to her was effortless. She had razor-sharp wit and a smile that could make you forget your own name. Naturally, one date turned into many, and eventually we became intimate. Honestly, I had never experienced anything like it. I didn't know a woman could be so generous and make you feel so genuinely desired. At first, Rachel thought my little romance was harmless, even cute. But as the months rolled by, she started interrogating me about May. I reminded her immediately that this entire arrangement was her brainchild, and that she herself was entangled with the very man I'd warned her about. She went silent. I could tell she wanted to say something but bit her tongue. Then the behavior shift began. She started coming home early to cook dinner, kept the house spotless, showed up at my office with lunch, and began initiating things in the bedroom. Honestly, under normal circumstances, all of that would have made me ecstatic. But given everything that had happened, and yes, I share blame for agreeing to this mess, I could barely go through the motions. When I did give in physically, it was just to get it over with. Something inside me had died when it came to Rachel, and she could feel it too. I asked what prompted this sudden turnaround. She said she wanted to prove that she loved me and was happy with me. I didn't mean to, but I burst out laughing. I asked her, "What about your little squad of girlfriends? Your manager boyfriend? Your parade of one-night stands?" She said nothing that evening and went to bed sobbing. The next day I came home to find her waiting. She announced that she wanted to close the marriage, that the whole experiment had been a catastrophic mistake, that she regretted every second of it and wanted us to be each other's priority again. I told her to come clean, to tell me what actually started all of this. And sure enough, it was her circle of friends who planted the seed, fueled by their own sexual escapades. And when Derek entered the picture, he enthusiastically endorsed that lifestyle and urged Rachel to live freely. Apparently, it evolved into an emotional affair first, only turning physical once we'd officially opened the marriage. Right, as if that distinction makes it any better. She compared the experience to being drunk behind the wheel of a speeding car. Exhilarating, intoxicating, but the cost of the wreck was more than she could bear. She said she now realizes she never needed anyone else, that what we had was truly one of a kind. But she feels like she murdered our marriage and any possibility of a future together. I told her I might never be able to see her as my wife again. She completely broke down. I just held her in silence while she wept until she fell asleep in my arms on the couch. Since then, she's resigned from her job and severed ties with every one of those friends, and with Derek. She even told me she'd spend the rest of her life making amends and would do whatever it takes to earn back the title of my wife. But I haven't ended things with May. Truthfully, May makes me feel like I can take on the entire world, and Rachel hasn't made me feel that way in a long time. I honestly don't know what to do. I'd love to recapture that special feeling if it's even possible. But May essentially rescued me when I was at my absolute lowest. Please, any advice would help. Almost forgot to mention, we had our first couples counseling session a few hours later. Wasn't sure what to expect. The therapist, Dr. Simmons, seemed warm and competent. She came across as impartial and genuinely invested in helping, even though it was only our introductory session. Rachel seized the opportunity to lay everything bare. She confessed that her group of friends made her question whether she'd squandered her youth by committing to her first boyfriend without ever exploring. That she never had the wild adventures these supposedly amazing women bragged about. Women who, let's remember, are either divorced or perpetually single, with not a single stable marriage among them. Dr. Simmons noted that this kind of external influence is frequently destructive to marriages because of the fundamental difference in values. Rachel seemed to acknowledge this. She then revealed that once Derek began showing interest, some of these friends pushed her to see where it goes, that this was her golden opportunity for self-discovery. She felt guilty, or so she claims, which is why nothing physical happened at first. That changed when one of the divorced friends suggested an open marriage as a convenient loophole, assuring her that some couples actually emerge stronger from the experience. So after, again, according to her, reluctantly, persuading me to open things up, her so-called adventure kicked off. She described it as intoxicating and blinding, but hollow. Nothing like the deep foundation we'd spent years constructing. She began questioning her own motives. She admitted she could see the pain in my eyes, but rationalized it as part of an experience she'd never forgive herself for missing. Her one shot at something thrilling. So the full weight of what she'd done never truly registered until she noticed the change in me. Initially, she assumed that since I was dating too, I'd gradually come to terms with the arrangement. But everything shifted when May became a fixture in my life. Apparently, I started smiling for no reason again. My eyes would light up at a text notification or when I'd cheerfully step out to take a phone call. She said a pit opened up in her stomach. Panic attacks started hitting her out of nowhere. She went back to her friends for guidance, but they brushed it off as a perfectly normal reaction during the adventure. Then the very same divorced friend who had originally proposed this whole scheme said, "Looks like his girlfriend actually makes him happy." That was the moment everything crashed down on Rachel. The terrifyingly real prospect that another woman, not his wife, was the source of his joy nearly made her faint. She realized how insane the entire situation had become and begged her friends to help her win me back. Their response? "If you can't handle it, why did you open your marriage in the first place?" That's when she finally understood that these people were poisonous and a direct threat to our marriage and the life we'd built. From that point on, she'd been on a relentless campaign to reclaim me by any means necessary. I didn't share much on my end, but I did inform Dr. Simmons that May was still very much in the picture. The therapist said plainly that no meaningful progress could be made while May remained involved and recommended we schedule a follow-up session for the day after next. Dr. Simmons mentioned that it was uncommon for someone to stay with their very first partner this long, and suggested that virtually any storm can be weathered. I strongly suspect she wants us to become one of her success stories. Apologies for the length, but I figured I owed you all a thorough update. Update 2. Still haven't figured out how to link posts, and a huge heartfelt thank you to everyone who's reached out. I'm sorry I couldn't respond to every single one of you, whether by DM or in the comments. Anyway, here's where things stand. Again, thanks for all the support. This has genuinely been an episode of a daytime talk show. I've since moved into an apartment owned by my brother Marcus at a ridiculously low rent. He owns several properties and would have let me stay rent-free, but I refused. Here's just a fraction of what I've uncovered about Rachel's behavior and some deeply unsettling details about Derek. During our second counseling session, I posed some of the questions that Reddit Stories GG readers had suggested. First, I asked whether she was absolutely certain nothing physical occurred before we opened the marriage. She stared at the floor and begged me not to make her say it. She claimed that if she admitted it, it would destroy us. But after I pressed, she confessed that while it wasn't intercourse, they had pleasured themselves in front of each other. This scumbag had convinced her that since there was no direct physical contact, it technically wasn't cheating, that they were merely appreciating each other's complete beauty. I was floored. Rachel began trembling and hyperventilating, tears and snot streaming down her face as she apologized over and over. Even Dr. Simmons looked visibly shaken, her expression one of pure disbelief. Rachel dropped to her knees and wrapped her arms around my legs, repeating how sorry she was. Second, I asked what truly changed her perception of Derek. She said that once she started pulling away from the group, his demeanor toward her shifted entirely. One evening, as she was leaving a meeting, she passed by his office and overheard him talking about her to another male colleague. He said he was amazed at how easy she'd been to reel in, and that she was living proof that you can't trust the quiet ones. When the colleague asked if he actually had feelings for her, Derek replied that she was a pleasant distraction, and that he had zero intention of leaving his fiancée Olivia. He added that this was simply about getting it out of his system, because the only woman who truly understood him was Olivia, and he wasn't about to jeopardize that. He even threw in that he felt sorry for me. But you snooze, you lose. When Rachel realized she'd been nothing more than a plaything to this man, combined with the fact that she'd betrayed me for a cheap thrill, she said she became suicidal in that moment. She left the building and vomited in the parking lot. Her first coherent thoughts were, "What have I done? And please forgive me. I'm so sorry." Third, I asked whether she had loved Derek and when exactly she stopped loving me. She looked me dead in the eye through her tears and said she never stopped loving me, which honestly makes the whole thing worse. She said he was just something different. She thought it was love at the time, but now sees how delusional she'd been. She gripped my arm with startling force and said she knows she ruined everything. But she misses us. Misses the bond we shared before all of this. She even proposed that we relocate, start completely fresh, just the two of us, the way it was always supposed to be. I told her that wouldn't be fair to May, and that I needed space away from her to process everything. Those words triggered a full meltdown. She sobbed harder, started saying things that didn't make sense, and clung to me as if I might vanish into thin air. It took both me and Dr. Simmons a while to calm her down. The therapist eventually convinced her that time apart might be exactly what we both needed to heal. I wish the update ended there, but it doesn't. When we got home and I started packing, Rachel's laptop rang with a video call. It was one of her former friends, Jenna, in tears. Turns out that after Rachel quit, Jenna and Derek had started their own little affair. But apparently Jenna had a pregnancy scare, which caused Derek to turn into an absolute monster. To make things even worse, Jenna had a boyfriend, Tyler, with whom she could genuinely see a future. And the only reason she'd gotten involved with Derek was because she was curious about the experience. Funny how that seems to be a recurring theme. Tyler found out after discovering an email exchange between Jenna and Derek discussing the potential pregnancy. Derek, of course, accused Jenna of trying to trap him. Tyler left her immediately. The reason Jenna called was that she believed Rachel had managed to save our marriage and was desperately looking for advice. I simply turned around, walked out, and have been living in the apartment ever since. Update 3. Rachel's desperate behavior and how it changed us. A few things have developed along with my decision moving forward. First and foremost, thank you to every single person who took the time to reach out with advice, share their own similar experiences, or simply offer a listening ear. It means more than I can express. So, quite a lot has happened. Jenna, the former friend with the pregnancy scare, was in fact pregnant. But the stress of losing Tyler and the humiliation of the affair caused her to miscarry. She went absolutely nuclear, full scorched earth mode against Derek. She exposed him to every level of upper management and to his fiancée Olivia. Out of curiosity, I looked Olivia up on social media. This woman is essentially the textbook definition of a sweet, small-town girl. Based on her profile, she's a special education teacher, a homebody, and deeply family-oriented. My immediate thought was, what on earth is he doing chasing other women when he has her at home? Honestly, how men like him end up with women like her remains one of life's great mysteries. Jenna actually contacted me directly. She wanted my perspective on everything because she was building a case against Derek, but she wanted to do it face to face. She'd already taken a health screening and so had I, so I agreed to meet. The moment I saw her, I could tell she was shattered. The dark circles under her eyes and her bloodshot gaze made it obvious she hadn't slept in days and was haunted by her own thoughts. She thanked me for agreeing to meet and immediately apologized for her part in Rachel's adventure. It came out that she and Rachel had spoken again, which is how she learned I'd moved out. She didn't try to deflect blame. She wanted to own her role in all of it, which is why she'd insisted on meeting in person. I thanked her for the effort, but asked why she was going to such lengths. She said that losing both a child and the love of her life had fundamentally changed who she was. She could barely look at her own reflection without feeling revulsion, and sleep was nearly impossible because all she saw was Tyler's face the day he found out. This woman clearly despised herself, and the meeting may have been her own form of self-punishment. She told me that since workplace fraternization was a serious policy violation, especially given that Derek held a supervisory role, he would almost certainly be terminated and potentially blacklisted from the industry. The same consequences could apply to her as well, and she'd accepted that. She left after getting my account of events and apologized once more. I needed to pick up a few belongings from the old place, so I chose a time when I thought Rachel wouldn't be home. Unfortunately, she was there. What caught me off guard was that she had most of our wedding photos spread across the coffee table alongside other pictures, and she was just sitting there staring at them. When she noticed me, I could see she'd been crying. She tried to embrace me, but I gently stepped back. She offered to make me lunch. I told her I wasn't hungry and wouldn't be long, just needed to grab a few things. She said she had something to show me. She pulled out her phone and showed me a message she'd received 2 days earlier from Derek, a hostile, berating tirade sent from a new number since she'd blocked his previous one. Apparently, Rachel had helped Jenna expose him to all relevant parties, and he was livid. She said she'd gotten the idea from an infidelity recovery website. She believed that by dragging the secret into the light, she was stripping it of its power and giving us a fighting chance. I told her I was glad she'd found the courage to do that, but it didn't change anything between us. I also informed her that I'd be discontinuing couples counseling. We would each attend individual therapy instead. She let out a quiet sob and said she understood. I know I should feel either relief at the steps that have been taken or fury that it took this long to get here. But all I feel toward her is numbness. That's not normal, which is precisely why I want to work through it in individual sessions rather than couples therapy. I've also consulted a divorce attorney at Marcus's recommendation just to have my bases covered. As things stand, I'm not inclined to fight for this marriage, and I think Rachel can sense that. Before I left, she tried once more to initiate intimacy. When I declined, she erupted, "What does she do for you that I can't? What does she give you that I can't?" Her voice was loud enough that I'm certain the neighbors heard every word. She said that whatever it was I wanted, she would do it. I shook my head and told her, if she still couldn't figure that out after everything that's happened, then it's pretty clear where our marriage is headed. And I walked out. Man, OP, your wife is truly starting to feel the full consequences of her choices. The heartbreaking reality is that she would give anything to turn back time and undo every one of those decisions. But life doesn't work that way. Maybe she can channel that pain into becoming a better person and a better partner. But it probably won't be with you, because she already burned this life to the ground. The one thing you can be sure of is that she will always remember you and carry that regret for the rest of her days. That's more than a lot of us ever got.